All right, buckle up, because we're diving headfirst into the world of ancient Greek and Roman art and culture.
Sounds exciting.
It is, especially since we've got Alexander Shapiro's Art Histories as our guide today.
Oh, I like this book.
Yeah, it's a good one. And, one of the things that really struck me was how Shapiro tackles this question of why Greek myths still have this power over us, even after all these centuries.
Yeah, it's like they're everywhere, right? Movies, books, even video games.
Exactly. And Shapiro actually starts off with this personal anecdote. He's talking about how when he was a kid, he was way more into Greek myths than Roman ones.
Can relate to that.
Right.
Like something about those Greek heroes and monsters, it just grabs you.
Totally. And Shapiro argues it's because those heroes, they're all about staying true to themselves no matter what. And that's something that really resonates with people, especially, when you're younger and still figuring things out.
Makes sense. Like you think about a hero like Achilles, right? He knows he could live a long life, but it means compromising who he is. So he chooses glory, even if it means dying young.
That's such a powerful statement,
Yeah.
choosing your own path, even if it's hard.
Mhm.
And then you've got Hector, knowing he's probably doomed, but he still fights to defend his city, his family.
It's that unwavering sense of duty, of honor. Even if you don't always agree with his choices, you got to respect his commitment.
Absolutely. It's like these heroes, they're grappling with these huge questions about life and death, about what really matters. And they're doing it on this epic scale.
And it's not just the big dramatic heroes either. Shapiro brings up Odysseus, and I think that's where his argument really clicked for me.
Oh, Odysseus. Yeah, what a journey.
Right. The Trojan War, shipwrecks, monsters, gods trying to kill him. But through it all, he just wants to get back home to Penelope.
Talk about dedication. But it wasn't easy, was it? I mean, Odysseus had some pretty tempting detours along the way.
Oh, for sure. You've got Calypso offering him immortality if he stays with her on her island. And then there's Nausicaa, who is totally smitten with him.
It's like a Greek mythology soap opera.
Right. And yet, despite all that, Odysseus chooses Penelope. He chooses their history, their connection, even though he hasn't seen her in years. Talk about loyalty.
Seriously.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that unwavering love. It's what gets him through all those trials and tribulations. But Shapiro pointed something out about Penelope that I'd never considered before.
What's that?
Well, he talks about how while Odysseus is on this epic physical journey, battling monsters and the elements, Penelope's on her own journey, but it's through time.
I see what you mean with the whole weaving and unweaving the burial shroud.
Exactly. She's holding on to hope, keeping those suitors at bay year after year. It's like they're both on these parallel paths of perseverance, just in different realms.
Wow, that's a really cool way to look at it.
It just goes to show these stories, they still resonate because they tap into something fundamental about the human experience, about love, loss, and the challenges we all face.
But it's when Shapiro takes us to the Roman heroes that things get really interesting.
Oh, yeah, because it's a whole different vibe, isn't it?
Totally. You go from these Greek heroes who are like, I gotta be true to myself even if it kills me, to the Romans who are all about duty and sacrificing for the greater good.
It's like night and day almost.
Yeah.
And Shapiro really highlights this contrast with Aeneas, the dude who's supposed to found Rome.
Yeah, Aeneas, talk about a complete 180 from someone like Achilles.
Seriously. So remind me, how does Aeneas' story go again? Troy's been sacked, right?
It's a mess. The city's in flames, and Aeneas is escaping with his family, trying to get everyone to safety.
But he ends up leaving his wife behind.
Well, yeah, it's kind of brutal. He gets separated from her in the chaos, and he just keeps going.
He doesn't even try to go back for her.
Nope. He's got a destiny to fulfill, a city to build. Shapiro points out that this is a prime example of that Roman mindset. Personal desires take a backseat to duty, to the needs of the state.
Well, that's harsh.
It's definitely a different way of thinking about things. And then there's Dido.
Oh, Dido. Yeah, that's a heartbreaker.
Total tragedy. Aeneas lands in Carthage after escaping Troy, and he and Queen Dido, they fall head over heels.
But he leaves her too, right, to go found Rome.
He does. He knows it's his destiny, his duty. And even though it tears him apart to leave Dido, he chooses Rome.
Wow. It's interesting because, in a way, both the Greek and Roman heroes are making these tough choices, but their motivations are so different.
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder, what does it really mean to be a hero? Is it about following your heart, like some of the Greeks? Or is it about sacrificing everything for a greater cause, like Aeneas?
Big questions, man. And it gets even more complicated when you consider what happens later in the Aeneid. Aeneas is about to spare Turnus, his enemy, right?
He is. He's standing over Turnus, about to show mercy, but then he
And
sees...
sees something that sets him off.
He does. Turnus is wearing a belt that he took from Pallas, a young warrior who was close to Aeneas who died in the fighting.
So Aeneas just snaps.
Pretty much. Shapiro describes it as this moment where Aeneas just loses it. He's so overcome with grief and rage that he kills Turnus, even though he just promised to spare him.
That's intense. It's like in that moment, all that Roman stoicism, it just crumbles.
Exactly. And Shapiro argues that it's this act, this killing of Turnus, that really highlights the tragic nature of Roman heroism. Aeneas, in fulfilling his destiny, sacrifices a part of his humanity.
Man, that's heavy stuff. So we've got Aeneas ditching his wife, breaking Dido's heart, and then going on a revenge-killing spree.
Well, you're making it sound a bit simplistic.
Okay, fair enough. But the point is, these Roman heroes, they're not always the most relatable figures, are they?
No, not really. But that's what makes them so fascinating to study. They represent a completely different worldview, a different set of values.
And Shapiro's point is that these values, they're reflected not just in Roman literature, but in their art, their whole culture, right?
Exactly. He gives another example, a story about this Roman soldier named Mucius Scaevola. Have you heard of him?
The name rings a bell, but I can't place it.
Well, Mucius gets captured by the Etruscans, who are basically Rome's arch nemesis at this point. And to prove his loyalty to Rome, Mucius does something pretty extreme.
Okay, what does he do?
He sticks his hand in a fire.
Lee what?
Yeah, he just shoves his hand right into a fire and holds it there without flinching. It's meant to show the Etruscans that he's not afraid of them, that he's willing to endure any pain for Rome.
Talk about dedication.
Right. And Shapiro points out that the story, it perfectly encapsulates that Roman ideal of duty and self-sacrifice. It's about putting the needs of the state above your own, even if it means enduring incredible pain.
So it seems like these Roman heroes, they're not really meant to be relatable in the same way that, say, the Greek heroes are. They're more like these symbols of Roman virtue, of what they aspired to be.
That's a good way to put it. And Shapiro reminds us that the Romans, even though they developed their own distinct cultural identity, they were hugely influenced by the Greeks.
Really? I would have thought they'd be like, we're the Romans, we do things our way.
Oh, they definitely had their own thing going on, but they had this deep admiration for Greek culture. They saw it as this wellspring of creativity and knowledge.
Interesting. So how does that admiration play out in Roman art and culture?
Well, Shapiro talks about how Julius Caesar, when he was facing that fateful decision of whether to cross the Rubicon River with his army, he actually quotes a Greek playwright.
Wait, seriously, Caesar was quoting Greek plays?
Yep. As he's about to cross the Rubicon, he says, or rather plays with the words of, this line from Menander's play, The Flute Girl, and it becomes this super famous quote.
The die is cast.
Right.
I always thought that was just a Caesar original.
Nope, he borrowed it, or riffed on it at least. It just goes to show how deeply embedded Greek culture was in the Roman consciousness. Even Caesar, this powerful Roman general, saw fit to quote a Greek playwright at this pivotal moment in history.
That's wild. And Shapiro connects this to the Ides of March, too, right? To that famous coin, the Ides of March denarius.
He does, and this is where it gets really cool. So after Caesar is assassinated, Brutus, one of the main conspirators, has this coin minted to commemorate the event. And on one side of the coin, there's this image of a pileus, which is this kind of cap.
Okay, a pileus. So what's the significance of that? Okay, a pileus. So what's the significance of that?
So in ancient Rome, the pileus, it was a symbol of freedom. Like when a slave was granted their freedom, they were given a pileus.
Really? So it's like your free hat.
Exactly. And that's why it's so significant on this coin. Brutus and the other assassins, they saw themselves as liberating Rome from tyranny, from Caesar.
Ah, I see. So they're using this ancient symbol to give their actions legitimacy.
Exactly. It's like they're saying, look, we're not just murderers, we're freedom fighters, just like the guys who wore these hats back in the day.
That's fascinating. And then Shapiro connects this to other works of art, right?
Yeah, he traces this whole visual lineage of the pileus and how it's used to represent freedom and rebellion throughout history.
Like with that Lorenzino de Medici medal, right?
Yeah.
The one he had made after assassinating his tyrannical relative, Alessandro.
You got it. Same symbol, different century, same message. Lorenzino's basically co-opting the Ides of March imagery, saying, hey, I'm doing what Brutus did, getting rid of a tyrant.
It's amazing how these symbols, they just echo through time.
Totally. And Shapiro, he even finds a connection to the pileus in one of Michelangelo's most famous sculptures.
No way. Which one?
The bust of Brutus. You know, the one where he looks all stoic and heroic?
Oh, yeah, I know the one. So where's the pileus?
It's subtle. If you look closely at the clasp that's holding Brutus's toga together, Michelangelo designed it to look like the Ides of March Denarius.
Get out of here. You mean with the daggers and the pileus and
It's
everything?
a whole shebang. It's like this hidden message, this little nod to those who fought for freedom against tyranny.
Michelangelo, what a legend.
Okay.
So we've got the pileus showing up all over the place. But Shapiro also talks about how, over time, it gets kind of mixed up with another type of cap, the Phrygian cap, right?
Right, and that one becomes a symbol of freedom, too. You see it in all kinds of revolutionary art, like that famous Delacroix painting, Liberty Leading the People, Phrygian cap right there on the woman leading the charge.
Oh, yeah. I never realized it was the same cap.
It's everywhere, even make its way to the U.S.
Really?
Here.
Oh, yeah, big time. Sons of Liberty, they were rocking the Phrygian cap during the Revolution. You'll see it on some early American coins. Even the U.S. Senate seal has one.
Wow, that's incredible. It's like this ancient Roman symbol for freedom found a new home in America.
It's true. Shows you how these ideas, they transcend time and place. And speaking of America, Shapiro makes this really interesting connection between the U.S. motto, E pluribus unum, and, are you ready for this? Ancient Greek philosophy.
Hit me with it.
So remember Heraclitus, the no man ever steps in the same river twice guy. Yeah, I remember that quote.
Well, Heraclitus had this whole philosophy about how the universe is in constant flux, always changing, becoming something new. But he also believed that within that change, there's this underlying unity.
Okay, I think I see where you're going with this. So, e pluribus unum, out of many. One, it's like a reflection of Heraclitus's idea.
Exactly. It's about finding unity in diversity. That even though we're all individuals, always changing and evolving, we can still come together as one nation, one people.
Man, that's deep. I never would have guessed that our national motto had roots in ancient Greek philosophy. But it makes sense, right? I mean, so much of Western culture, it all traces back to these ancient civilizations. Their art, their literature, their ideas, they're still shaping our world today. So as we wrap up our deep dive into art histories, I think what really stands out to me is this fundamental difference between the Greek and Roman mindsets. On the one hand, you have the Greeks with their focus on individual heroes, their journeys, their struggles. It's all very personal, very immediate, very human. And then on the other hand, you have the Romans, who are all about duty, sacrifice, the greater good. It's a much more, serious outlook, maybe even a little bit tragic.
That's a great way to put it. And the thing is, neither one is necessarily better than the other. They're just different ways of looking at the world, different ways of understanding what it means to be human. And I think Shapiro does a brilliant job of showing how both of these perspectives have shaped Western art and culture, even up to the present day. He leaves us with a great question, actually. He asks, how do these contrasting approaches to heroism, these different ways of seeing the world, how do they continue to influence us today? And I think that's something worth thinking about. As you encounter different works of art, different stories, different cultures, pay attention to those underlying values, those different perspectives on what it means to live a good life. You might be surprised by what you find.
That's great advice. And on that note, I think we'll wrap things up. Thanks for joining us on this epic journey through ancient Greek and Roman art and culture.